In every relationship and throughout daily life, your child is coming across differences, either differences between himself and his partner, or different lifestyles and people at school or in the community. Our culture has progressively become more and more open towards differences between people over the past decades, and the current youth generation demonstrates a high level of acceptance and tolerance. But some harmful attitudes and behaviors persist. Teens need to learn to treat others who seem or are different with respect. They also need to learn how to use empathy to connect with others. Again, role modeling is an important tool that you can use to show them what it is like to value the differences among people in your life. But it's also important that they hear your values straight from the horse's mouth. This is a pretty broad topic, and as with many of these topics, you need to decide what your values are. Do you believe that every human being has value, worth, and dignity? I'd like for you to take a moment and pause the video to write down your understanding of the dignity and value of people, no matter who they are, just because they are human. Why do you believe what you believe? How does that impact your daily life? How does that determine your own behaviors and how you treat others? Let's pause and write it down. Okay. Studies are showing that the current young generations are less likely to use empathy in their daily lives, so focusing on building empathy skills in your teen is important. Two of the most important aspects of empathy: empathic concern, which is a likelihood to feel sympathy for the misfortunes of others based on an other-focused orientation, and perspective taking, which is a cognitive ability to understand a situation from the other person's perspective, have been shown to be decreasing with the current young generations. One theory about why we're seeing this change is based in changing parenting styles. For instance, one study showed that empathy was higher in adults if their fathers were involved in their child care and if their mothers inhibited their aggression when they were children. We are also seeing a decline in parents' contentment with the sacrifices that parenting requires, which seems to be correlated with the children's development of empathy. For more information about these studies, please see the bibliography at the end of this course. Some suggested ways of countering this trend with your own children is to talk through others' points of view with them in a variety of situations. For instance, when your child comes to you with resentment about how another person is acting, describe some possible reasons that person might be acting that way. This is not to excuse truly bad behavior, but to provide a lens through which your child can understand normal behavior in others. A fantastic opportunity for this tool is when your child is upset that her or his friends are focusing more on the new friends that they have made. This is not true mistreatment, and the more that your child can learn to see things from his friend's point of view, the more he will develop strong empathy skills. Another opportunity that you have to teach your child empathy for others who seem different is if a heavier person, or someone who seems like they're just not fitting into the gender norms, walks by on the street and your child makes a comment, or even if your child doesn't make a comment, that's an opportunity for you to help show them that you can think from the other person's point of view. Talk about what it must be like for that person, what the good things probably are about that person and what they experience in daily life, and some of the struggles and oppression they might face. Another way to encourage empathy and compassion in your child is to share your beliefs about the basic dignity and worth of every human being, so that your child can extend the compassion and empathy she shares with her friends with all who are being oppressed or mistreated. How does your child respond when he sees others being disrespected? Does he defend them right away? Does he talk to the disrespected person later on to make sure they're okay? Does she tell the person doing the disrespecting that they just can't do things like that? Does she turn to other friends and tell them she thinks it's messed up how that person was so disrespectful? Any of these are great ways to use empathy to handle a situation. About 80% of students have experienced sexual harassment in school at some point, and about half have experienced it in the past year alone. Sexual harassment is discrimination. Because sexual mistreatment happens so often in schools these days, Sarah is teaching young people how to stand up for each other, And we really need your help as parents to keep reinforcing these messages in your child's daily life. The majority of victims are picked on because they don't fit into the stereotypical roles of their gender. For instance, boys who are not athletic or don't seem manly enough are the most likely to be harassed. Girls who are either seen as too sexual, even just because her body is curvier, or too masculine are most likely to be harassed. This does not mean the victim needs to change. It does mean that we need to encourage our children to respect all people, whether they fit our expectations of them or not, and whether they fit in or not. It also means we need to encourage our children to stand up for people who don't fit the cultural norms of gender. Each person has a right to be themselves, and if that doesn't fit with people's expectations of their gender, that's okay. We have found that harassers do not necessarily stop on their own, and adults do not always notice or respond appropriately to the sexual harassment going on in school. So we encourage other students to help create an atmosphere among their peers where sexual harassment is just not tolerated, and it no longer benefits the harasser by increasing their popularity. One of the major inhibitors for students who would otherwise stand up for victims of sexual harassment is when they perceive that the victim is different from themselves, and in response to that difference have decreased empathy for the victim. The more you can encourage empathy for all people, the more likely your child will take steps to defend and protect others when needed. Teach your child why you believe that every person, no matter what, has value and deserves to be safe and free. Whenever your child is talking about others, talk about what it must be like to be the other person. Offer guesses of what the other person might be thinking or feeling to model for your child how to have an open, compassionate mind. We also encourage parents that if you know of a situation of sexual harassment or you even think that there might be one, that you approach the administrators at your school, either the principal, a counselor, or even a teacher there, and ask more questions. Make sure that they know what's going on and that they're keeping an eye out for the children involved. Also, if a school is not handling a sexual harassment incident appropriately, as a parent, you have a lot of power to make a difference. Make sure that you continue to meet with those administrators and with the counselors to make sure that they really are following through and making the school a safer place as it should be. If they are not following through and the students are not becoming safer, then there is much work to be done, and they are actually liable, no matter what their gender, race, sexual orientation, ability, that each person is respected and treated equally.